Welcome, and thank you for clicking on the umbrella section of our website here at Colorado Insurance. This is essentially going to give you the basics of what an umbrella policy is and really why everybody should have one. There are specific households that really, it's mandatory that you should have an umbrella policy, kind of based on the exposures that you have. But again, we always recommend that everybody has an umbrella policy, and I'm going to tell you why. If you have any questions beyond this tutorial, please never hesitate to call our fantastic sales team at 720-283-1722, and we can answer all those questions for you. So let's get started here. First of all, the basic concept of an umbrella policy, this is an additional layer of liability coverage over your underlying policies. And if you watched my home tutorial, you know that liability is any harm that you could do to another person or any damage you could do to somebody else's property, both on and off premise of your home. Essentially, what it's doing is it's protecting your assets and your family from any harm you could do out in the world as people. It's the only insurance that we can buy for being people out in the world, which can be a dangerous thing. So based on that, again, it's going to be an extension of liability over your underlying policies. So your primary home, your primary autos, primary toys, maybe a motorcycle, maybe you have rental properties. So again, the more exposure that you kind of gain over time, the more valuable an umbrella policy is. And just because you have an umbrella policy doesn't mean that you're insured properly. The limit of your umbrella policy may not match the type of coverage that you may need based on the assets that we need to protect. So that's a conversation that we have with you to make sure that it fits properly. So let's get rolling and we can go through the specifics of an umbrella policy. So basically, the umbrella policy is going to be rated off of the auto limits that you have and also the liability limit that you have on your homeowner's insurance policy. So the split limits on your auto and the underlying liability on your homeowners are going to really dictate how much the rate is, plus some other factors, but this is going to be one of the main things. So based on your auto limits, obviously the higher split limits that you carry, the less expensive the umbrella policy is going to be. Essentially what the insurance company is assuming is, hey, the more coverage that you have on your auto policy, the less likely we are to have to pay out on an umbrella policy because hopefully we're providing you with enough coverage on the auto policy to take care of a catastrophic event. So in this example, we've got 250, 500, and if you watched my auto tutorial, you would know what that means, but that's always the limit that we recommend. And then again, your property damage, they're always going to want you to be at 100,000. And again, this is going to dictate rate and acceptability on the umbrella policy. So they're going to look at those auto limits there. And then again, they're going to look at your home liability as well. We're always going to max that out at 500,000. And again, the more home liability that you have, the less likely that they are going to have to pay out from your umbrella policy. So they'll look at that as well. Let's move down here to the actual umbrella coverage. So umbrella policies will really range anywhere from 500,000. They could go upwards of 20 to 30 million. Just kind of depends. The most common umbrella policy is right at $1 million, which is why I put it there. That's a pretty common one. But again, this is a conversation that we're going to have with you, the client. Hey, how much in assets do we really have to protect in your family? Maybe you've got a $5 million portfolio that we need to cover. Again, if you get sued for something, they're coming after you for $5 million. We want to make sure that we protect your family and your assets. So that's a conversation that we're going to have with you, and we're going to make sure that this limit matches your needs. Moving forward, let's talk about your retained limit. Now, this is just a fancy word for deductible. What this is the deductible that you're going to be responsible for if you need to, in fact, use your umbrella policy. Usually pretty minimal. We're only talking about $250 deductible here for $1 million worth of coverage. You can see that would be pretty insignificant if you did have to dip into your umbrella policy. But definitely something to look at, your retained limit. Again, just a fancy word for deductible there. So let's move down to the bottom section. This is the other big piece that's really going to dictate your rate. That was a beautiful circle there. So this is the exposure that you have in your household. The basic household, let's say you have a house and 2 cars. That's going to be a pretty basic umbrella rate. So you got $1 million umbrella over a house and 2 cars with 2 drivers. Pretty simple there. It's once you start getting into maybe you have additional autos, maybe you have a motor home, maybe you have a motorcycle, jet skis, a boat, um, four wheelers, just kind of depends. The more vehicles that we have exposure for under the umbrella, the more that umbrella is going to cost. And it makes sense. It's more exposure for the insurance company, it's more exposure for you, the client. So we want to make sure that those match accordingly. And then, of course, if you have teenage drivers in the house, that is absolutely going to affect your rate on your umbrella policy, but I would almost say it is mandatory to have an umbrella policy if you have drivers under the age of 25. They are more likely to get into a catastrophic car accident than any other driver on the road. So, and we've absolutely seen scenarios where people have had to use their umbrella policy. I've personally dealt with that in my family as well. So, if you have drivers under 25, I urge you to please talk to our sales team about getting an umbrella policy, and again, discussing how much liability you actually need on that umbrella policy to make sure that you're covered. The last thing that's going to dictate this rate, and it's not on this example, is going to be rental properties. The more rental properties that you have under your portfolio, the more exposure that you have. You have renters in those properties, and if something goes wrong with that property, and you have a catastrophic event to where they're suing you for something, you absolutely want to have that extra layer of liability coverage to cover your assets. So the more properties you have, the rate's going to go up a bit on the umbrella policy, but well worth it in my opinion. So that's pretty much the basics of an umbrella policy. Again, if you have any questions whatsoever, please contact my sales team. That number again is 720-283-1722. We look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you so much.